I'm Jason Epperson. This is RV Miles, and it's time for this week's RV and camping news roundup. This episode is sponsored by the Togo RV app, offering checklists, maintenance reminders, and more. The app is free, but a $39 per year Togo RV Plus membership gives you RV-specific route navigation, the R-Village social network, overnightrvparking.com, and Road Trippers Plus, along with a host of discounts on RV products like tires and lithium batteries. You can get $10 off Togo RV Plus with the code RVMiles10X. This week's episode is all about upcoming travel trends, from snowbirds to fuel prices to the winter weather outlook. But we begin with a look back at these unprecedented times on public lands. The Center for Western Priorities, a nonpartisan conservation and advocacy organization focused on protecting land, water, and communities in the American West, has released a major report on camping's rise in popularity on America's public lands. The biggest finding in the report is that camping was well on the rise before the pandemic, which could mean that this boost in visitation is here to stay. In 2014, an estimated 39% of reservable lower 48 public lands campsites were filled during the summer months, which increased to 54% in 2020. That's an increase of 39%. Summer weekends had a higher percentage of campsites filled, up an estimated 60% in 2020. That's all with many public campground closures and travel restrictions in place in early 2020. Campsite occupancy increased more in the western states between 2014 and 2020 than the east, giving the region the highest occupancy rates overall. For instance, in Colorado, summer reservations jumped 64% over the 6-year period. The data doesn't include anything in 2021, but clearly those numbers will drastically increase by the end of this year. And that's with much of the travel industry still in recovery mode. 2022 could be an explosive year for American travel, with the return of international travelers and more consumer confidence among Americans. A survey of 5,000 such travelers just released from travel company Evolve points to more planned vacations and longer stays in 2022. The average respondent said they plan on 3 vacations of 5 to 7 days, and the great outdoors is their top destination. 58% are interested in hiking, biking, kayaking, and other wellness and relaxation experiences in the coming year. With the number of people planning vacations that involve urban experiences, only 15%. But before we get into the 2022 travel season, we have to get through the holidays and winter. This holiday season, people still plan to stay closer to home than in an average year, according to Zeta Pulse. More people will travel for the holiday period than in 2020, but they won't be going far, with 53% still citing COVID as their top concern. Snowbirds, however, are an entirely different story. People who usually head south to a warmer climate during the winter season are moving forward with their annual migration, probably in much greater numbers than in 2020. Campground chain KOA projects that 12 million households, 31% of all active camping households, plan to camp between December and February, a clear indication that the popularity of camping will continue through the winter. An estimated 2.4 million active households will spend 3 or more months snowbird camping. Another 9.6 million will take shorter snowbird trips of 1 to 2 weeks. KOA says 9% of camping households are projected to try snowbirding for the first time. When asked about travel destinations, Florida was the most popular response. 63% of snowbirds plan to migrate to the Sunshine State in the coming months. Other popular destinations include Arizona at 13%, South Carolina at 5%, Texas at 5%, and North Carolina at 3%. In addition to looking at overall snowbird business, we've been particularly interested in Canadian travel, said Toby O'Rourke, president and CEO of KOA. Prior to the opening of the land border, our research indicated that 16% of Canadian snowbirds were still planning to travel south, while another 16% were taking a wait-and-see approach. With the change in travel restrictions, we expect even healthier Canadian business. While the overall incidence of snowbirding is lower among Canadians, we are happy and ready to see the return of these guests at our campgrounds. According to KOA's latest projections, 55.9 million households will have camped in 2021, compared to 48.2 million in 2020. An estimated 7.7 million households will have camped for the first time this year. Adding that figure to last year's 17.8 million households, will have joined the camping lifestyle in 2020 or 2021. Fueling some of that winter camping could be unseasonably warm weather in the south and larger snowfall tallies in the north, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Let's check in with their just-released winter outlook.
Cooler than average sea surface temperatures emerged in the tropical Pacific in October, signaling the second La Niña winter in a row. In part due to La Niña, our forecast favors below normal precipitation in south central Alaska, Southern California, the Southwest, and the Southeast. Above average precipitation is favored in Hawaii, Western Alaska, the Pacific Northwest, the Northern Rockies, Great Lakes, and the Upper Mississippi Basin. Above average temperatures are favored in Hawaii, across the South, and in much of the eastern U.S. Below average temperatures are most likely for Southeast Alaska, the Pacific Northwest, and eastward to the Northern Plains. For every location, there exists the possibility of below, near, or above average conditions. The maps display the most likely category, and greater probabilities indicate greater confidence. Both outlooks have parts of the country labeled EC for equal chances, indicating no tilt in the odds toward any outcome. Drought currently dominates the western half of the U.S., including the Northern Plains and the Missouri River Basin. The majority of the eastern U.S. remains drought-free. Drought improvement is most likely across Northern California, the Pacific Northwest, the Upper Midwest, and in Hawaii. Persistence and development are forecast for the Southwest and much of the Great Plains.
There is one thing that could put a damper on travel in the winter and into 2022, however: fuel prices. Around this time of year, the average price of a tank of gasoline usually begins to head down. But in the past week, it's gone up another 7 cents, now averaging about $3.38 a gallon for regular unleaded, largely due to the price of a barrel of oil sitting at a 7-year high. But the worst news is that in Europe and Asia, the price of natural gas has become so high that natural gas-fired power plants are switching to oil as their energy source, increasing the demand for oil dramatically. In China, flooding closed several coal mines, increasing the cost of coal, which has them switching to oil as well to produce power. And of course, as usual, oil sources are artificially keeping production low in order to make back some of the money they lost in 2020 and prior. Many U.S. oil companies are leery of once again oversupplying the market, and they're focused on returning cash to shareholders who have lost a lot over the past decade. OPEC and its allies have only gradually increased the output that was sidelined in early 2020. For now, they seem content to let oil prices remain elevated, and we get stuck with really expensive fuel of all types. Real quick before we go, I want to let you know that the RV Miles podcast, our weekly show covering all of our travels and the industry news and interviews and a whole lot more, is now on its own YouTube channel. So check out the RV Miles podcast YouTube channel if you're looking for the next podcast. That's it for this week's RV and camping news. Please hit the subscribe button if you want more of these, and remember, likes are free and they help a lot. Here's last week's news video if you missed it, and here's a great video that you haven't checked out yet. See you next time.